Humans don't panic. They get louder. Jakari intelligence report. Commander Durak's skin prickled as he stared out the transport window into the stars. The mission had seemed simple. Observe humans in combat. Understand their tactics and evaluate whether they could work alongside a more disciplined species like the Jakari. His superiors called it an opportunity, a chance to learn from humanity's chaotic ways. Durak had studied the files. He knew the reports. Loud, unpredictable, emotional. He was curious, but not concerned. Until he saw them, the human Marine squad was dug in on the front lines of a war-ravaged planet. Some patrolled the area, others crouched in shelters, scouting the terrain. Durak's job was to blend in, observe, and report. But no report had prepared him for the chaos that followed. The sky filled with smoke, explosions in the distance. Durak braced himself. He was Jakari trained for calm discipline. Precise. Humans were the opposite, and it began. All units move. Forward, shouted Sergeant Blake, standing tall in the chaos. Move forward. We're in the middle of a firefight, Private Harris yelled back. You want me to run into that? You're insane, move, or I'll drag you out myself. Blake snapped without missing. A beat gunfire sliced the air around him. Durak blinked. Were they disobeying orders? Falling apart already? Another voice rang out flanking left. They're trying to hit us from behind, yelled. Corporal Daniels, flank yourself. Daniels, Blake barked. I'm busy. Durak ducked behind a crate. His heart raced. His mind spun. There was no order, no formation. They shouted over one another, mocked each other, contradicted commands, yet they moved as one, covering fire, advancing, pushing the enemy back. It made no sense. This wasn't panic. It wasn't collapse. This was how they fought. Harris, move! Blake shouted again. Yeah, I'm moving. Harris snapped, firing back without hesitation. Durak couldn't believe it. No telepathy, no control, just chaos. But they advanced, louder, fiercer. Unstoppable humans don't panic. They get louder. Their words were sharp, cutting, chaotic. But somehow they worked. Yes, they were loud, but their actions matched their words. They were not panicking under pressure. There was no mutiny. No breakdown in the ranks. And yet Durak felt a cold knot of dread tightening in his chest. This had to be failure. It had to be. The humans couldn't possibly be trusted to fight like the disciplined Jakari, where every movement was planned. Every thought shared through telepathic link. This was chaos, pure and wild, but it was a chaos that held, as if shouting and confusion were part of their strategy. Then it happened. Blake, moving like a man set ablaze, turned toward Durak, still crouched. Behind a crate, eyes wide, Durak, get your ass in gear. You see that sniper in the building. Take him out, or you'll be the one catching a bullet between the eyes. Durak froze. Was that an order? The voice was full of fury, and yet beneath the rage, there was an unnatural calm. Before Durak could process it, Blake fired another burst toward the building. Move now. Durak hesitated for just a heartbeat, legs locked in indecision, the noise, the shouting, the wild movements. None of it made sense to him, and yet they were winning. Durak took a deep breath and moved, low, swift. He advanced toward the building Blake had pointed at. Each step, careful, calculated. If he failed, he knew Blake would drag him across the battlefield himself. His rifle raised heart. Pounding, Durak crept toward the structure. A labyrinth of cracked concrete and broken glass. The sniper was inside, somewhere. This wasn't the kind of fight he had trained for. Jakari battles were clean, precise. Now he heard human voices still yelling, still laughing, still swearing, and still moving forward. It should have been disorienting, but suddenly Durak saw the truth, the arguing, the chaos. It wasn't a flaw, it was a strength. Before he could lock on his target, a shot rang out, cracking through. The air, Durak dove, rolled, and fired back. Seconds later, silence. The sniper was down. Durak stayed behind cover, breathing hard, mind spinning. The humans weren't falling apart, they were thriving. Then Blake's voice cut through the smoke again. Keep pushing. We're almost through. This time, Durak didn't pause. He moved with the others. Weapon ready, heartbeat steady. They fought in a way he didn't understand. Loud, brash, everywhere at once. The mission was changing, becoming something else entirely. Durak didn't understand these humans, but he couldn't ignore what he saw. There was something deeper behind the chaos, something terrifying. When the battle ended, the silence was almost worse than the fight itself. Durak leaned against a broken wall, still tense, still trying to understand. They had taken the enemy position, quickly, brutally, with an ease that shouldn't have been possible. Sergeant Blake was already issuing new orders. The squad moved through the wreckage, collecting weapons, helping the wounded. No celebration, no triumph. Just routine. Just another day. Durak Blake's voice came again. He flinched, grabbing his rifle on instinct. "You good?" Blake asked. "You look like you're going to pass out." "I'm fine," Durak said. "Just adapting to your method." Blake grinned. "It's not the methods you need to worry about, it's the screaming. Trust me, you get used to it. The more we yell, the better we fight." "I see," Durak replied. Though he wasn't sure he did. He had seen them fight. He had seen the madness. And somehow it worked. As the humans boarded their transport, Durak followed, still shaken. Still unsure what kind of species fights like this. What kind of warriors yell in the middle of battle, mock their own, contradict their leaders, and still win. He had to report. The Jakari High Command needed to know what he had seen, before it was too late on. The way back, Durak couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The humans were unpredictable, dangerously so. By the time they reached the Jakari extraction point, Durak had already begun drafting his report in his mind. He had to explain everything. The chaos, the shouting, the bizarre, seemingly random movements that somehow inexplicably led to victory as soon. As the shuttle doors closed, Durak activated his communicator, transmitting an emergency signal to Jakari High Command. He didn't know how they would react, but they had to be warned. His message was short, urgent, filled with a tension he had never felt before. Urgent report. Durak said, "The humans, there is a serious problem. They are not stable. They fight among themselves, break formation, disobey orders, and they yell. They yell constantly. I recommend immediate extraction. These creatures are too dangerous." He paused, breathing heavily, waiting for a reply. Seconds stretched into minutes. Then his communicator crackled to life. "Commander Durak, repeat your last transmission. Are you reporting that they are yelling?" "Yes," Durak said, his voice rising. "They are yelling. During battle, they shout, contradict each other, insult each other. It's chaos. I'm telling you, it's a threat. They can't be trusted to fight as a unified force. They're unstable, and I fear they will—" His words were cut off by a sharp reply. "Do not panic. Remain on site and continue observation. Do not engage. Repeat, do not engage the humans unless absolutely necessary." Durak blinked, his mind struggling to catch up. They weren't taking him seriously. How could they not? What he had witnessed wasn't order. It was insanity. Back at base, the human squad was unloading from the transport, cleaning weapons, joking, laughing, as if nothing had happened. Durak stood apart, watching with a mix of fear and awe. They were not like the Jakari. They had no telepathy, no shared thoughts, no synchronized movement, and yet somehow they fought better than anyone he had ever seen. "Durack, you coming?" Blake's voice broke his trance. Yes, fine," Durack replied. Still trying to hide the rising panic in his chest, he couldn't stop seeing it, the chaos, the confusion, and yet they had won. The High Command didn't understand, and that was the real danger. Durack was about to send another urgent transmission. When his communicator buzzed again, "We have intercepted your report, Commander Durack. You are ordered to return immediately. A full extraction is authorized." His heart skipped a beat. They understood. Finally, without hesitation, he turned toward the extraction point. But the unease in his chest didn't fade. He wasn't sure what would happen next. But one thing was certain. The humans were unlike anything he had ever faced. And if the Jakari High Command didn't understand them soon, they were in for a very rude awakening. The shuttle ride was unbearable, filled with dread and confusion. Durack had complied with the extraction order, but the things he had seen, they haunted him. He arrived at the Jakari Command Center, immediately escorted to an emergency war council. The room was cold, sterile, silent. Everything the Jakari considered proper for a military briefing, but Durack could hardly focus. His chest tight, his thoughts spiraling, he was afraid. The council wouldn't believe him. The officers stood around him, silent, powerful. Their minds sharp, telepathic. Durack had never felt so exposed. His thoughts were a mess. Too many questions, not enough answers. Finally, a senior officer spoke, his eyes like burning coal. "Commander Durack, you submitted a report regarding the humans. You claim they shouted. During combat..." Durack nodded stiffly. "Yes, they yell. I've never seen anything like it." The officer's eyes narrowed. "Are you suggesting this is part of their communication strategy?" Durack hesitated, then said yes. They shout orders, mock each other, insult each other. During battle, it's chaos, but they win. They always win. But I don't understand how their entire structure is unstable. The room grew heavier. Silence, then one by one. The council's minds reached out. Telepathically, Durack could feel their probing thoughts, feel their skepticism, like cold hands pressing against his own mind. "They do not fight as we do," Durack said quietly. His voice edged with disbelief. "I've never seen such disarray. They contradict each other. They scream insults. They move unpredictably. And yet, every single time they win, it makes no sense. It's like their chaos is part of the strategy." "Enough," the senior officer snapped. "You are not making sense, Commander Durack. Are you certain of your report? Are you sure you are not under duress? Perhaps you were exposed to psychological warfare?" Durack bristled. "No, I'm telling you, they're not under duress. They're operating like machines, but without order, without discipline. They yell, they argue, and yet they work together. They aren't afraid of the chaos. Why would they communicate this way? Why not use telepathy? Like us?" another officer asked. Durack opened his mouth. But no words came out. He didn't know. He didn't know why they screamed at each other, why they seemed to thrive on the noise, on the disorder that would shatter other species, just as Durack thought he might collapse under the council's pressure. The chamber doors slammed open. Sergeant Blake walked in, loud, brash, completely unfazed by the atmosphere. "What's this about a report?" he asked. "So loud." Durack flinched. "Durack, you've been complaining about us. Don't go blaming our methods now." The room froze. The council blinked, their minds grinding to process this intrusion. Durack, already frayed, just stared. Blake walked right into the center, like he belonged there. "I take it you've heard all the misunderstanding," he said, glancing at the stunned Jakari. Then back at Durack, "He's been telling you that we yell." "Huh?" Durack nodded slowly. "Yes, that's what I've been trying to explain." Blake chuckled. "Of course we yell. How else are we supposed to get the job done?" Durack furrowed his brow, opened his mouth, but Blake kept going. "Listen when things go sideways. When the fight is real, you don't have time for quiet little mind melds or calm, telepathic chit-chat. You yell, you shout orders, you scream insults, you make sure everyone is focused, and most of all, you make sure the enemy hears you." Durack blinked, still trying to process the madness. The Jakari exchanged glances, their mental impressions. More unsettled by the second, Blake carried on, totally unaware of how much he was shaking their world view. "We shout because it works. You don't need telepathy. When bullets are flying, when your squad's in the dirt, you just need to communicate. Even if that means shouting like lunatics," one of the senior Jakari finally spoke. "But you argue in the middle of battle." Blake shrugged. "Sure, why not? A little friendly banter never hurt anyone." The officer recoiled. "Banter," he repeated as if tasting. "Poison. You argue with your comrades while fighting and still win." Blake grinned wider, slapped Durack on the back, nearly knocked him over. "That's the beauty of it. Humans don't need silence. We don't need perfection. We just need to connect even. If that means yelling like maniacs, you get used to it. Everyone learns the rhythm. And once you have that, you just know what to do." Durack stared at him. "The pieces clicking into place, so you're saying all this shouting, all this chaos, that's just how you communicate." Blake nodded, looked at the council. "It's how we do things, and it works. Every time. Trust me on that." The room fell into deeper silence. The Jakari officers were speechless. The realization dawned slowly, like a cold wind in a sealed chamber. Durack had feared this truth. Now he understood it. Humanity wasn't simply chaotic. They were strategic in their chaos. Every shout, every contradictory order, every insult, it was all part of something carefully orchestrated, but impossible to replicate. The humans didn't need advanced technology. They had something else. Noise volume, emotion. The very things the Jakari discarded were the exact weapons the humans wielded. Durack finally spoke, his voice low. "You're more terrifying than—" I thought. Blake just smirked. "You haven't seen anything yet." As the council disbanded, the Jakari officers filed out, their minds swirling with questions. They would need to rethink everything. They had misunderstood humanity, assumed they fought with the same logic, the same order. But now, Durack stood in the empty chamber alone, and he understood the truth. Humanity's greatest strength was not their weapons, not their tactics, not their discipline. It was their ability to turn chaos into victory. And in that they had no equal.